All right, so get this. Imagine waking up in 2033. Your morning coffee is paid for with crypto. You go to a new doctor across the country, and your medical records are instantly shared thanks to blockchain. You're even voting on a community project funded by a DAO. Sound crazy?
It does sound pretty wild when you put it like that.
That's the potential of this decentralized decade that we keep hearing about, though, right?
Yeah, it seems like everyone's talking about it these days.
Well, we wanted to cut through the hype, so we did a deep dive into 10 sources, reports, analyses, predictions, and they all point to crypto and blockchain tech completely reshaping our world in the next 10 years.
It's interesting, actually. It's not just about the tech itself, the way these sources talk about it. It's more like a whole societal shift.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Some of the titles were pretty dramatic.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like digital gold rush.
Navigating the crypto frontier.
Makes it sound like we're heading into uncharted territory.
Right. Not just like a tech upgrade, but a whole new era.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is it's not just hype. These sources actually dive into real-world examples of how this is already starting to happen.
That's what I found really compelling. It's not just theory anymore. It's like we're seeing the early stages of this transformation play out.
Exactly. So let's jump into some specifics. One of the things that came up a lot was DeFi, decentralized finance.
Yeah, DeFi is definitely a hot topic. One source highlighted this protocol called Aave.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it lets you lend and borrow crypto without going through a bank.
So cut out the middleman.
Exactly.
Potentially get better return.
Potentially, yeah. But of course, there are risks too, like with smart contract vulnerabilities.
That's the thing. With higher reward often comes higher risk, right?
Absolutely.
It's not like a traditional savings account.
Right. It's definitely not set it and forget it. You need to be really informed.
Informed participation is key. And it's not just in finance either, right?
No. DeFi is just one piece of the puzzle.
Remember when we used to joke about owning digital cats?
Oh, yeah, the early days of NFTs.
It all seems so silly.
But now, NFTs are making digital ownership a reality.
And it's not just for memes anymore.
Right. One source talked about how NFTs could revolutionize property ownership.
Whoa.
They gave an example of a platform called Upland,
Upland.
where you can buy and sell virtual property backed by real-world locations.
Okay, so that virtual beachfront property in the metaverse could actually be worth something someday.
Well, it's still early days, but the potential is definitely there.
Maybe I need to reconsider my investment strategy.
But it's not just about property either. Think about event tickets.
Oh, yeah.
In-game items. Digital art.
All becoming more secure and transparent, so no more worrying about fake concert tickets or someone stealing your virtual sword.
Right, all thanks to NFTs.
That's a win in my book.
And then there's the whole world of DAOs.
DAOs, yeah, those still sound a bit like science fiction to me.
To me too, honestly.
Every time I hear decentralized autonomous organization, I picture like robots making all the decisions.
Yeah, it's not quite that dramatic.
Yeah.
But it's still a pretty radical shift.
So how do they actually work?
Well, one source gave a really concrete example, using something called MakerDAO.
I've heard of MakerDAO.
It's a DeFi protocol.
Yeah.
Governed by people holding its native token, MKR.
Okay, so the token holders have voting rights.
Yeah, they vote on proposals that determine how the protocol operates, like interest rates and collateralization ratios.
So it's kind of like a company run by its shareholders.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
But instead of quarterly meetings, everything's decided through blockchain-based voting.
Right. Much more direct and transparent.
Wow, the implications of that are huge.
They really are. DAOs could change how we think about everything from corporate governance to community organizing.
But like anything this revolutionary, there are some big hurdles to overcome, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The sources didn't shy away from those.
Not at all.
Regulation, security, mainstream adoption, those were recurring themes.
Definitely one report argued that. How governments choose to regulate crypto will be a defining factor in the next decade.
It's a big question, isn't it?
Huge.
Will they embrace the innovation or try to stifle it?
The answer will have massive repercussions.
And then there's the whole security issue. I mean, we've all heard those horror stories.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're not just stories.
About crypto hacks and scams.
It's a valid concern for sure.
So how do we address that?
Well, the sources emphasized the importance of robust security protocols and user education.
Makes sense.
They even went into detail about different types of wallets and best practices for keeping your crypto safe.
That's the kind of practical information I think we all need.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement, but being aware of the risks is crucial.
Totally agree. And what about mainstream adoption? I mean, can you really picture my grandma using Bitcoin to buy groceries?
Maybe not quite yet. But several sources pointed to the fact that crypto platforms are becoming more user-friendly,
That's true.
and more businesses are accepting crypto payments.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
So it's definitely heading in that direction.
Okay, so we've got the stage set, the tech is evolving, but let's get to the really exciting part. How is all of this going to impact our everyday lives?
That's what it all boils down to, right? The sources paint a pretty amazing picture. It seems like every sector could be revolutionized in some way.
Let's dive into some specifics then. What about finance? I feel like that's where we're already seeing the most disruption.
One report highlighted the potential for faster and cheaper cross-border payments
Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
using stablecoins pegged to fiat currencies.
Uh-huh.
They use the example of sending money to family overseas.
All right.
What used to take days and incur hefty fees could soon happen instantly for a fraction of the cost.
That would be life-changing for so many people.
It would.
And I know one of the sources talked about financial inclusion too.
Yes, they argued that crypto and DeFi could provide access to financial services for the billions of people around the world who are unbanked or underbanked.
Imagine being able to get a loan or start saving, even if you
Wow.
don't have a traditional bank account.
Exactly. It's a whole new level of financial empowerment.
It really is. It's exciting to think about the possibilities, but I do wonder if these systems are so different, will they be easy for everyone to use?
That's a crucial point, and the sources acknowledge that. User experience is key to widespread adoption.
So they're thinking about that.
Oh yeah. One analysis actually showcased a platform called Silo.
Silo.
It's designed for mobile-first users in emerging markets.
Interesting.
It uses phone numbers as public keys, so it's super easy to send and receive crypto, even if you're not tech-savvy.
That's fascinating. It's like they're building the financial system of the future with accessibility in mind from the ground up.
It's a really interesting approach.
Okay, so finance is clearly going to be shaken up, but what about other industries?
Well, let's talk about supply chains.
Supply chains. Okay.
One source gave a really vivid example of how blockchain can be used to track tuna. Yeah, from the moment it's caught to the moment it ends up on your plate.
Wow.
This not only combats illegal fishing, but also ensures food safety and transparency for consumers.
So I could actually know for sure that the fish I'm eating is sustainably sourced
Yeah,
and hasn't been tampered with along the way.
exactly.
That's pretty incredible.
And it's not just food either. Think about pharmaceuticals,
Okay.
luxury goods,
Uh-huh.
anything that's vulnerable to counterfeiting or fraud.
Right.
Blockchain could revolutionize how we verify authenticity.
Some time. No more fake designer handbags.
Exactly.
There are potentially dangerous counterfeit medications.
Huge implications for consumer safety.
That's huge.
And the potential goes even further. Another source discussed how blockchain could streamline international trade by automating customs processes and reducing paperwork.
So less bureaucracy.
Much less.
And more efficiency.
Right. It could save businesses billions of dollars
Wow.
and make global commerce more efficient.
It's like a whole new era of global trade, powered by transparency and trust.
It's a pretty compelling vision.
Okay, so we've got finance and supply chains covered, but I know there are tons of other industries that could be impacted. What about healthcare?
Healthcare is another area where blockchain could be transformative.
In what way?
Well, imagine a world where your medical records are securely stored on a blockchain,
Okay.
giving you complete control over who has access to them.
That would be amazing. No more faxing medical records or dealing with complicated HIPAA regulations.
Exactly. One source described a pilot program in Estonia
Estonia, wow.
that's already using blockchain for secure medical data management.
So it's already happening.
Yeah, patients can access their records instantly, grant permissions to doctors, and even track who has accessed their information.
It's like having a digital vault for your most sensitive health information.
That's a great way to put it.
And it would make things so much easier when switching doctors or seeking second opinions.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just data storage. Another source talked about how blockchain could be used to track the provenance of pharmaceuticals.
Okay, so ensuring their authenticity.
Exactly. Preventing counterfeit drugs from entering the supply chain.
That would be a huge win for public health.
It would.
No more stories about people getting sick from fake medications.
Right. It could save countless lives.
And then there's the potential for personalized medicine.
Oh, yeah. That's a really exciting area.
Using blockchain to securely share your genetic data with researchers.
They could use that data to develop targeted treatments
Wow.
tailored to your specific needs.
It's like the sci-fi future we've always dreamed of is starting to become a reality.
It really is.
But with all this talk about data sharing and transparency, I do wonder about privacy concerns.
That's a valid concern.
How do we balance those two things?
Well, the sources acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm.
Striking the right balance between data accessibility and privacy will be key.
So it's not one or the other.
No, it's about finding that sweet spot.
Okay.
One report even suggested that. We might see the development of privacy-enhancing technologies, specifically for blockchain applications, allowing for selective data sharing and encryption.
So I could choose to share certain parts of my medical record with a specific doctor without giving them access to everything.
Exactly. It's about giving individuals more control over their data.
Even within a transparent system.
Right. It's about empowering people.
Okay, so we've covered finance, supply chains, healthcare, and it feels like we're just scratching the surface. There are so many other industries where this tech could have a huge impact.
Absolutely.
Energy, real estate, education, entertainment. The potential is mind-boggling.
It really is. It seems like there's no limit to what blockchain could disrupt.
But before we dive into all those other sectors, let's take a step back and consider the bigger picture. What are the overall societal implications of this decentralized decade?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
And the sources we looked at paint a very optimistic picture, suggesting that these technologies could lead to a more equitable and democratic world.
That sounds amazing. But I have to admit I'm a bit skeptical. How exactly would decentralization lead to those outcomes? That sounds amazing, but I have to admit I'm a bit skeptical. How exactly would decentralization lead to those outcomes?
Well, it comes down to this: shifting power away from centralized institutions
Okay.
and putting it back into the hands of individuals.
Like a power shift.
Yeah, think about it. With DeFi, you're no longer reliant on banks for financial services.
Right.
With blockchain-based voting systems, elections could become more secure and transparent, potentially reducing corruption.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
And with DAOs, people can directly participate in decision-making processes that affect their lives.
So it's about giving people more agency, more control over their own lives,
Exactly.
rather than relying on these intermediaries who might not always have their best interests at heart.
That's the idea.
It's a pretty radical concept when you think about it.
It is. One source even went so far as to say that.
Yeah.
Blockchain could be the key to unlocking a new era of digital democracy.
Digital democracy.
Where citizens have a more direct say in how society is governed.
That's a pretty bold claim.
It is, but it's not hard to see how these technologies could disrupt existing power structures.
Yeah, I can see that.
And create opportunities for more grassroots participation.
More power to the people.
Right, and it's not just about politics either. Think about the potential impact on things like access to information,
Okay.
freedom of speech.
Uh-huh.
With decentralized platforms, it becomes much harder for governments or corporations to censor content or control the flow of information.
So it's like the internet on steroids.
In a way, yes.
Even more open, even more resistant to censorship.
But of course, as with any major societal shift, there are potential downsides and challenges.
Right, there's always another side to the coin.
Exactly. One report actually raised concerns about the potential for increased inequality.
Inequality, how so?
Well, if access to these technologies isn't evenly distributed, we could end up with a two-tiered society where those who are already tech-savvy and financially well-off benefit disproportionately.
And everyone else gets left behind.
Exactly, and that's why. Several sources emphasize the importance of education and digital literacy.
Education, yeah, that makes sense.
We need to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to understand and utilize these technologies, regardless of their background or socioeconomic status.
It's like we need to build a bridge to this decentralized future so everyone can cross it, not just the privileged few.
I like that analogy a lot.
That's a good one.
And it's not just about technical skills either. We also need to foster critical thinking
Okay.
and media literacy.
So people can navigate this complex world of decentralized information.
Exactly, and make informed decisions.
So it's not just about teaching people how to use the tech, it's also about helping them understand the broader implications and potential pitfalls.
Precisely, and that brings us to another important challenge, the potential for misuse and unintended consequences.
Right, because just because something is decentralized Doesn't automatically make it good or ethical.
Exactly. One source actually highlighted the risk of DAOs being used for malicious purposes,
Like what?
like funding criminal activities
Oh, wow.
or spreading misinformation.
So it's a double-edged sword.
It is. They argued that we need to develop strong governance mechanisms and ethical framework.
To make sure these tools are used responsibly. It's almost like we need a whole new set of digital ethics
I think you're right.
to guide our behavior in this decentralized world.
That's something that the sources didn't really delve into, but it's a crucial conversation we need to have as a society.
How do we ensure that decentralization leads to greater freedom and fairness, rather than chaos and exploitation?
That's the million-dollar question.
It's a big one.
And it's not one with easy answers.
But it's clear that the stakes are high.
The choices we make today will determine what kind of decentralized future we create.
So no pressure.
Run it all.
Well, on that note, let's bring it back to the listener. We've covered a lot of ground today. From the technical details to the potential societal impacts.
It's been quite a journey.
It has, but what does it all mean for someone who's just starting to explore this space?
That's a great question.
What are the key takeaways they should walk away with?
Well, I think the first is that this decentralized decade is full of potential. But it's still early days.
So we're all still figuring it out.
We're all on a learning journey here.
So don't be afraid to dive in, ask questions, explore this exciting new world.
Exactly. Be curious, be critical,
Yeah.
and be prepared to be surprised.
Great advice. But as with all our deep dives, we like to leave our listeners with something to ponder, a thought that goes beyond the source material. And one thing that really struck me is that while all these reports and analyses focus on the technology itself, they don't really delve into the human element.
That's a brilliant observation.
Typically, they're missing a piece of the puzzle.
What you're pointing to is the crucial question of whether we as a society are ready for the social and ethical challenges of a decentralized world.
Because tech can evolve quickly, but human behavior, our values, those take a lot longer to shift, right?
Precisely.
So as we navigate this exciting new frontier, we need to ask ourselves some tough questions.
Like what?
How will decentralization impact our relationships, our communities, our sense of identity? How do we ensure that these technologies are used for good, not for harm?
Those are some big questions.
They are, and there are no easy answers, but they're questions worth pondering as we embark on this journey into the decentralized decade.
I couldn't agree more.
It's almost like we need a whole separate deep dive just to unpack the human side of this technological revolution.
I agree it's ripe for exploration.
Oh.
But even within the scope of what we've covered today, there are some really interesting points that touch on this human element.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Remember how some sources talked about crypto and blockchain fostering a more equitable society?
Yes. Financial inclusion, transparent systems, power shifting away from centralized institutions. It definitely sounds like a recipe for more fairness.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Achieving those positive outcomes depends heavily on how we as individuals and as a society choose to use these tools.
So the tech itself isn't the solution.
Right? Technology itself isn't inherently good or bad. It's all about how we apply it.
So it's like a powerful new ingredient. It could make a delicious meal or disastrous one, depending on the chef's skill and intentions.
Exactly. And that chef, in this case, is all of us.
We're all chefs in the decentralized kitchen.
We need to be mindful of the potential pitfalls, like the ones we discussed earlier. Volatility security risks the digital divide.
Right. Ignoring those could actually worsen existing inequalities.
Rather than solve them.
So just because something is decentralized doesn't automatically make it fair or beneficial for everyone.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
We need to actively design and implement these systems with equity and accessibility in mind.
So it's about being intentional.
It's on us to ask the tough questions. Who is benefiting from this technology? Who is being left out? How can we ensure that the decentralized future is one that works for everyone, not just a privileged few?
It's a huge responsibility, but also an incredible opportunity to create a better world.
I couldn't agree more. And the sources do offer some glimpses into how we might navigate these challenges.
Like what?
For example, several of them mention the importance of education.
Education makes sense. The more people understand about crypto and blockchain, the better equipped they'll be to use them safely and effectively.
Exactly. We need widespread financial literacy programs, clear and accessible information about how these technologies work, and training programs to equip people with the skills they need to thrive in this new economy.
It's like giving everyone the tools and knowledge they need to be successful chefs in this decentralized kitchen.
I like the analogy.
It's a good word.
And it's not just about technical skills either. We also need to cultivate critical thinking, ethical decision-making, and a strong sense of digital citizenship.
So it's about preparing people not just for new jobs, but for a whole new way of interacting with the world.
Exactly.
One where they have more agency and responsibility.
The decentralized decade isn't just about technological disruption. It's about empowering individuals to take control of their own lives.
Yeah.
And shape their own futures.
And that's a powerful vision. But it also raises the question, are we as a society ready for that level of individual empowerment? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Are we ready for the decentralized decade? Not just technologically, but mentally, emotionally, ethically. It feels like this is about so much more than just new tech. It's about rethinking how we function as a society.
It really is. And to be honest, the sources we dove into, they paint a pretty optimistic picture, but they don't have all the answers. They focus on the potential benefits. But it's up to us to grapple with those deeper questions you've raised.
Yeah. One thing that struck me was how many sources emphasize the need for a shift in mindset. It's not enough to just adopt the tech. We have to be ready to embrace the values of decentralization. Things like individual empowerment, transparency, collaboration.
Absolutely. One report even used the term digital citizenship, arguing that we need to develop a new set of norms and behaviors for interacting in this decentralized world.
So it's a whole new way of being.
It is. It's like the Wild West out there right now.
Really?
And we're all figuring out the rules as we go along.
So it's not just about learning how to use a crypto wallet. It's about rethinking our roles and responsibilities in a society where power is more distributed.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting.
It does get complicated.
How do we balance individual freedom with collective well-being? How do we ensure that decentralized systems are used for good and not for harm? How do we prevent the digital divide from widening even further?
Those are tough questions, and I don't think anyone has all the answers yet.
I agree. It's a work in progress.
But it's encouraging to see that. Some of the sources are already starting to explore potential solutions. Like, what kind of solutions?
Well, one report talked about the importance of community-driven initiatives and grassroots education efforts.
That makes sense. If decentralization is about empowering individuals, then it stands to reason that the solutions should come from the bottom up, not just from governments or corporations.
Right. We need to create spaces for dialogue, experimentation, and collaboration where people can come together to figure out how to navigate this new landscape.
It's almost like we need a decentralized approach to building the decentralized future.
I love that.
It's very meta.
It's not about waiting for someone else to give us the answers. It's about taking ownership and shaping this future together.
And that's a message I think our listeners can really connect with. It's empowering to realize that. We're not just passive observers in this technological revolution. We have the power to influence how it unfolds.
Absolutely. The future is not predetermined. It's a blank canvas, and we each have a brush in our hands. It's up to us to decide what we want to create.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, from the nuts and bolts of blockchain to the philosophical implications of decentralization.
It's been a fascinating journey, and I hope our listeners are walking away with a sense of both the incredible potential and the profound responsibility that comes with this new era.
I couldn't agree more. If you're feeling inspired to learn more and get involved, there are tons of resources available online. Do your own research, connect with like-minded individuals, and don't be afraid to experiment and explore.
That's the spirit. The decentralized decade is full of opportunities and challenges. Let's embrace the adventure together.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of crypto and blockchain. We'll be back soon with another episode, exploring a different facet of this rapidly evolving landscape. Until then, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep building that decentralized future.